Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Allison, and I'm an adult services librarian at the Hudson Library, and I wanted to thank you all so much for joining us for tonight's cooking demonstration. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you to keep checking our website for new virtual programs. We have another cooking demo actually coming up later this month on Wednesday, March 17th with Anne Loparo of Annie's Signature Sweets. And it's actually on St. Patrick's Day, and she'll be demonstrating how to make Irish cream cheesecake. You can sign up for this program as well as any others directly on our website at hudsonlibrary.org. Tonight, though, I'm happy to introduce Brandon Chrostowski, founder and CEO of Edwin's Leadership in Restaurant Institute. Tonight, Brandon will be demonstrating how to make red wine braised short ribs. We love for these programs to be interactive, so if you have any questions for Brandon during the program, please send them in using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and I will relay the questions to Brandon. If you are looking for the recipe for tonight, it is included in the email you received with the Zoom link. I can send it out again after the program. So if Brandon is ready, we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to our studio kitchen. We've had quite a busy day. You know, we do cooking classes Thursday nights, so we had a group at 5 o'clock. We had a group at 6 o'clock, but we saved the best for last at 7 o'clock here, Hudson Library. We're just excited to be a part of this. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm not sure if else, can we see anyone else who's on the call, or is it all kind of disguised? How does that work?
Yep, so they can all see you, but the only way that they can communicate with us is through the Q&A. So as they ask questions, I'll kind of ask you them as we go through the program. So everyone feel free to ask as it happens.
I got it. Okay, because sometimes it's nice to watch other people cook to see if their technique is right. But I understand this is what we do. All right. So
yep, and I think I think they're planning on kind of just watching you do it so that they can take the recipe and try on later.
Nice. I love it. Well, in that case, grab a glass of wine or a very stiff martini and sit back and enjoy the show, because we're making a red wine braised short rib. And this recipe I used for many, many years in New York City in a French restaurant called Michelin, and it's worked out there swimmingly, and it's worked out even better here at the restaurant. So we're going to jump right in. The first thing I'd say is, if you're going to do a red wine braised short rib, it really starts with this idea of patience and just let it go low and slow. When we do these at the restaurant, we actually cook our Mirepoix red wine and then burn off the alcohol and then put it over the raw short rib for 4 days. And we let that red wine mixture really infuse and kind of penetrate the short rib. That takes a lot of time and some refrigeration space. The way we're doing it tonight is how you see it most oftentimes prepared, where we're using everything we have in front of us. We're searing, we're maximizing flavor, and we're using some red wine to braise our short rib and get a great sauce at the end of all of this, okay? So first things first, I'll start out here with, well, you can start out by opening a bottle of wine and grabbing a glass if you're like Julia Child, all right? Or you can start with the vegetables here. We've got some carrots, okay? We got onion, we've got celery, and for those of you in the professional world, it's called Mirepoix, right? This is Mirepoix, 50% onion, 25% celery, 25% carrot. And what we're going to simply do is just prep this, and we're going to want to use kind of a larger dice when we're cooking this, because this Mirepoix is going to cook with the short rib the entire time. So we don't want to cut it really small, because what's going to happen, obviously, is mush, okay? We don't want mush. We want a nice, vibrant, firm vegetable, and then we want to cook that down so all the flavor is released at the proper times, okay? So voila, I peeled an onion. I've got myself a carrot. And what I'm going to do is just continue to work on it here. And again, a lot of people would say, you know, the short rib maybe is so hard. It's too hard to make. I'll go to the restaurant and buy it. It's good for business like us. But if you want to do it at home, it's not that hard. And the braise is a very forgiving dish. Whereas, you know, if you're just sauteing something or grilling it to that perfect medium rare medium, it gets kind of tedious. With the braise, you can really let it just go, and and enjoy a very flavorful, soft dish. All right.
Brandon,
Yes.
we've already got quite a few questions coming in. If you don't mind, I'll ask you some.
Shoot.
Okay, so first, you said that they could try this at home. Could this be done in a slow cooker?
It could be done in a slow cooker. Where the difference I would do with the slow cooker is when we get to that step of searing, you want to be able to get that sear down. And if your slow cooker doesn't get hot enough, you'll have to use a pot or a pan and then just kind of put it all inside of your slow cooker. And then now you're in business.
Awesome. And then someone is wondering, has the popularity of short ribs led to the price increase? They're wondering why it's such an expensive cut.
It's like Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Everybody wants this now, so the price goes up. You're absolutely right. I mean, these second and third cuts of meat used to be pennies in the dollar, and now they've become a higher demand for them, and obviously the supply lowers because there's only so much short rib per cattle, and so the prices go up. I want to mention a couple things here. Knife skills are like probably the most important thing in the kitchen, especially when it comes to speed, efficiency, flavor, etc. Holding your knife, I mean, let's not hold it like this. My grandma used to hold a knife like this. Great cook. I'm not going to say anything bad about her cooking, but that's not what we do. We wrap our fingers around this here. We get a good firm hold on it. We use a rocking motion, and most importantly, we're going to use a claw. You see, my fingers, my thumb is not out in front of my fingers here. It's pulled back behind it with an even claw that allows me to get a nice, safe, smooth, precise cut, okay? There we go. So I got a larger dice there. I'll do the same with our carrots. I'm just gonna go here. Notice I'm using that claw, right? I've got my claw here. My thumb is tucked to the back. My fingers are nice and even. I'm holding my knife properly, and I'm doing a nice rocking motion. None of this, okay? Nice rocking motion. Full control, okay? All right, and we'll do the same thing with the celery. Good. Okay, now what we want to do here is now our prep is virtually done. I want to take this orange zest. My goal is to kind of get all these tools out of the way so I can just then cook. I want to take a good 1, 2, 3 slices of my orange because that's going to be an aromatic down the road. The juice, you can simply cut some of this juice here, and we can use it when we cook. All right, our garlic, I'm going to leave whole just like this. If you got small cloves, if they're large cloves, just cut them in half. You don't have to make a big deal. So I've got my orange zest. I've got my orange cut. I've got some nice anchovies there. The kitchen smells like someplace in southern Spain. All right, their anchovies and orange. It couldn't be better. It's like Seville. And now I'm going to get to the cooking part of this just as soon as I open up the bottle of wine here.
We've got a couple more questions for you.
Go ahead, shoot.
So they would like to know, I'll kind of mix a few in here, about the different cuts of short ribs, if you could use venison instead of beef, and how to pick a good cut.
Okay, all good questions, all right? All very good questions. So let's just cover the idea of a braise, okay? And then I think this will solve every question you have the world around, okay? So a braise is something used when there's a tougher cut of meat or maybe a tougher vegetable like a head of fennel or something. So a braise is done when you have a tougher product that you're trying to soften. It's also done when you have a product that does not have a lot of intermuscular fats and you need to make more moist and soft. So with that said, I mean, we braise venison, we braise lamb, we braise rabbit, we braise all sorts of things, right? It's you as a chef identifying what cut is tough and what cut is not tough, right? So you're not braising filet mignon, New York strip. You're not doing those sort of things, right? You're doing the tougher cuts of meat like the chuck flap, the top round, the sirloin. These are tougher cuts that you can really braise and get into. Short ribs come in all various ways, shapes, and sizes, right? I mean, you get with the bone-in short rib, you get the chuck flap. Like what we have here today is more similar to a chuck flap. So it's coming off right off that rib on the bottom part of it. They're exactly what we're looking for in terms of a short rib, but there's not just one short rib. Butchers now tend to kind of get creative with it. I would show you this is a better picture of the actual cut of the bone to explain it more. But it's really coming off, obviously, the rib, but not far up the rib where it gets tender. It's coming down towards the bottom and now towards the back. That chuck flap is what we're using today.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm gonna get this pan nice and hot, and the goal here is to sear it. So part of the braise classically is you always want to sear the outside. You're trying to seal in the flavor. You're trying to develop flavor with that Maillard reaction, right? You're searing it, and what it's gonna do is give your final product more flavor. You know, having cooked in France for a long time, I can tell you a big difference that we make here in the United States is we don't take our time, and we don't take our time in maximizing flavors. So what we're gonna do today is definitely gonna maximize flavor. And what I want to do is I just want to grab a plate here, and I'm gonna take my short rib, right? I'm gonna make sure I take my short rib. I'll season it with a bit of salt and pepper. And here's one of these steps, you know, make sure you get all sides of it, right? Not just one side. Don't just get all quick with it. Just take your time, season it evenly, okay? Season it nice and evenly. And then we're gonna take and dredge this in flour, okay? So a little salt, a little pepper, and we're gonna dredge it in flour evenly. This is really gonna be the base of our flavor here. See, I'm taking my time on each piece of the short rib. I wanna make sure that it's seasoned evenly. It's so easy to cut a corner, and a simple step like this can ultimately affect your final product. Now the flour is pretty simple. I'm just gonna have a nice container over here just to minimize the mess. And what I wanna do is kind of like toss it a little bit. And what it's gonna do is help absorb some of that juice that comes off so it doesn't get too messy in the pan, you know? So pan on, but make sure I have the right amount of oil. I'm using an oil like a vegetable oil or a grapeseed oil, canola oil. You don't want to saute with olive oil. The smoking point is much too low. You're gonna burn it. And the flavor is not what we want in a sauce. We want more of a neutral flavor. So salad oil, canola oil, like I said, a very simple oil.
We have a couple people asking, so they're saying that short ribs don't actually have like a rib bone in them then?
No, they oftentimes will have some of the rib bone in it. Like when we get them cut, we have them cut almost lengthwise like this. And each one of them is a piece of that rib. Coming off the flap, like you see here, this is coming more off a chuck flap. You don't see any bone in there, right? So you can get bone in, you can get boned out. I mean, ideally, you're looking for flavor, and the bone in will oftentimes add a little bit more flavor, but your yield is so much lower. And when they do get the bone in it, it's coming from a thinner part of the rib, okay? So the thinner part of the meat, I should say. Whereas down towards the bottom, like our chuck flap here, there's no bone and there's definitely not any thinness that we're talking about here, right? Okay, I've got a nice hot pan, okay? I'm trying to develop a sear. So I'm not sweating this meat, I'm searing this meat. If you've got a kitchen that's small, open the window, open the door, it's gonna get a little smoky in here. So what I'm gonna do here is simply just take, and there you go. A nice, see there, you can see there's some activity in the oil. Okay. And what that flour is doing is not allowing all that liquid to come out and drop the temperature of the pan, giving me an inadequate sear. It's really protecting this pan temperature and the oil that's going on here to make it a really nice, smooth, even sear. Okay.
We have a couple questions about ingredients. First, do you have to use anchovies?
No, you don't. You don't have to use anchovies. That's a personal preference, and you'll see in the end it adds a bit of this umami flavor to it, a rich roundness that's countered by the orange. I think it's a very good recipe, but you don't have to use it.
And then someone says that they're allergic to orange zest. Is there something that they could substitute it with that would give a similar type of flavor?
Well, not the juice, just the zest.
Yeah.
We'll just use the juice then. That'd be quite fine.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to use every bit of the product that we're working with today. We're not going to leave anything on the table. Again, this is a very, how do you say it, European way to engineer a meal, right? We're going to use everything. We're not going to waste anything.
What temperature are you searing the meat at?
It's high heat. You know, you're medium plus to high heat when you're searing your short rib. Again, sears develop, you know, you're caramelizing the meat. So if it's too slow and low, the problem's going to be that it's going to just, you know, sweat it out. And by the time that you get the color that you want, it's perspired a lot. So I want a nice medium to high flame here. And then I'll eventually drop this down a little bit as we sweat our vegetables out. But for now, nice and hot, nice and hot. I'm looking at this here. It's not quite developing the color that I want yet. So I'm just going to leave it in a little longer. And, you know, another thing, especially when you're roasting, right now we're braising. But when you're roasting, especially, you want to make sure this meat is at like not refrigerator temp. You want to make sure it's been kind of, you know, slacked out a little bit in room temperature. It's not going to affect the safety or sanitation of product. What it allows to do is the heat to penetrate the protein. So especially in a roast where you're trying to evenly cook it, not dry it out, you really want a nice, you know, room temp meat. But I follow that same principle when I'm braising or when I'm doing anything, sauteing fish or, you know, baking beef bourguignon. I want to make sure my meat is at the temperature of, you know, not the refrigerator, you know, maybe it's not the temperature of the room, but it's certainly not cold to the touch. Okay, so I'm liking where this is going. I've got a good sear there, good caramelization. You can see what I'm doing there. You know, a lot of you at home will probably be cooking with these. Use tongs or spoon and whatever your preference is. Make sure you're touching the food, okay? I don't want to see somebody at home not touching the food, because you don't touch the food, you're automatically removing one of your senses from cooking properly. You know, we cook with our ears, we cook with our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our touch, right? If I touched this and felt that it was cold, I would say, hold on, it's not ready to sear. Let's give it some time. So as much as you can, try not to use these, all right? There's two, you know, they're not as intimate as maybe a spoon and a hand that you can use to really get in touch with what you're doing.
Do you have a type of pan that you recommend using?
You know, I don't really. I mean, you can go like boutique and, you know, get some all clad, or, you know, like we have copper pots here we use. This is from a French shop there in Paris that we forged it from. It's all to what you want to use. Like at home, I'm using like a really cheap pan. I'm not getting too much into the thought process of it. I just like to cook, and I moderate my heat accordingly. What's even more important, it's not always the gauge of steel. It's making sure you have a nice flat surface you're cooking on, so it cooks evenly. So if you're not going to, like, you know, Williams-Sonoma and spending a lot of money, you don't have to. The restaurant uses many types of pans. Some of them are aluminum based, but it's all about moderating the temperature between that pan and that product on a flat surface. That's of the utmost importance.
Awesome. And then they said the recipe calls for 2.5 pounds of ribs. Is that what you're using right now?
Yeah, we have probably, we've got about just under 2 pounds. We're a little less than 2 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we're making our way here now, and we want to make sure, again, we're searing this on a higher heat. We want to make sure that we're getting a nice, even brown color. We want to make sure we're doing this on all sides. It's important to get on all sides because each side is going to add flavor. If we just do two sides, we're leaving out, you know, 80% of the flavor. We want to get all sides, right? All sides got to be seared. And it's also going to develop this little fond here. You can see there's oil here, but you still have some brown caramelization on the bottom of the pan, which is called fond. And that's going to be really the basis of your sauce. So when you're a saucier, you're really treasuring this fond on the bottom of the pan. Okay, it's very important to keep.
I'm
right.
just gonna hop back a little bit to this question. Someone
Yep.
was wondering, they missed what you called the mixture that was the onion, carrot, and celery.
That's called Mirepoix.
Thank you.
Mirepoix. M-I-R-E space P-O-I-X. Mirepoix is 50% onions, 25% celery, 25% carrot. And it's really like the trinity or the base of like all cooking, right? All French cooking. You know, French cooking, you're always using, you know, garlic, using bay leaf, you're using thyme, using mirepoix. You can most find those 6 things in every dish of the French cuisine. That and some butter, right? So what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm really happy with the caramelization that's going on here. I'm going to continue this process. Again, I don't want black. Black is burnt, black is bitter. We want a nice brown color. I don't know how the clarity of this lens is, but this is certainly making a nice brown color to what we're doing here. See that really nice? Good. So I'm working my way through this. The whole idea behind shortbread takes time. You know, if you're at home, you're multitasking. You're not just focused solely on this. You might be doing some other things, organizing some things. You come back, you make a move, you go out, come back. And that's the principle behind a lot of the French cuisine, is just really taking your time, doing it right. And it makes all the difference in the world. Making sure that each step of the way, you're making the best, you bring out the best flavor that Prague has to offer. That goes from a carrot to a piece of beef to the orange, you name it. It's all got a peak and a pinnacle to its flavor and its freshness.
I'm reading these comments here, and it actually says the person who mentioned they were allergic to orange zest is allergic to anything orange. So she couldn't just use the orange juice. Do you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, you could omit the whole stuff itself. I wouldn't even stick to orange extract, even though it's oftentimes chemically manufactured. You could do something, maybe pull it back a little bit, do lemon. The whole idea is to bring out some freshness to your product, your dish, and bring balance to what's normally a very heavy, thick, viscous dish. This becomes kind of lighter and fun with the addition of this zest, this citrus zest. So lemon would be fine. I wouldn't get into lime or grapefruit. I think that'd be pretty good. There we go. Now you can see every part of that shortbread is getting seared, and we've been doing it for some time now. Think about it. We've been searing this now for a good, I don't know, you can tell me, 8-9 minutes. And this is what it takes to make the right dish. This is it. A little patience, a little expertise, the right kind of meat. Talk to a butcher shop and come to Edward. We'll guide you along the way. And once this is all seared, every side, look at that beautiful sear here. I think you can see a good contrast on the plate. Once you get this good sear, what you want to do is pull them out of the pan. Look at that wonderful, wonderful sear here. You want to pull them out of the pan and make sure that you save everything in this pan with the exception of some of that oil. Now, I just don't want all that oil on the pan. I'm going to dump some out. I'm going to retain what's in there in terms of fond. And if you have to start with even a little fresh oil, do that. Sometimes that oil gets all that beef fat in there. The beef fat starts to burn at a certain temperature. And so this next step is important. What we're going to do is we're going to really sweat out our mirepoix. Oftentimes you'll see in kitchens they they get a really flaming hot pan and they throw their vegetables in and they start to caramelize. It's now about all that. You know, it's just low and slow. You really want to sweat out these ingredients because that's what brings out the flavor. That's what brings out the richness here. So I'm going to let my onions go for a little bit here. So capture what's in the bottom of the pan. I want to scrape a little bit so it doesn't burn across this process. I can do that. I want to make sure I get these carrots sauteed and sweat them out. So it's not burning. It's more so sweating the flavor, okay? Sweating that flavor, right?
We've got someone wondering that the vegetables seem to kind of be whatever you've got in the fridge. Is this flexible or should you stick with the ones you've got there?
I'm sorry, what was the flavor? Sauteed, what was the question?
I'm sorry, they said the vegetables that you're using seem to be kind of whatever you've got in the fridge. Is that flexible? Could you use something different or stick to those?
Please stick to these. You know, I mean, you can't break tradition here. I mean, I'm telling you, it's so simple that we screw it up all the time. The French cuisine is very disciplined in what it is and the tradition of what it is. Onions, carrots, and celery. It's Mirepoix. Every day, every night. I mean, you don't want to really alter that. Now, if you don't have onions, carrots, and celery, well, then I suppose this whole dish is going to be whatever you want to concoct, right? And then you start pulling things in from elsewhere. But you stick to these aromatics, it's going to give you a base flavor, a base undertone that is it's perfect. You know, this has been hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years of mistakes being made. And so the right proportion has been figured out. And I don't mess with that too much. Okay, I take and I put everything else back in this pan here. I've got my carrot now in here. I've got my celery. I've got some garlic. And it's sweating, right? I'm sweating this out. I'm sweating this out. I'm not looking for color or to brown this. I just want to bring the flavors out and reduce that bitterness, okay? It's almost like you're bringing out the essential oil of a spice or just waking up this, you know, this vegetable that's been stored for so long or it's browned for so long, and you're waking it up. And this is the beginnings of a great braise, okay? I like also, when I'm doing this, at this, like a little longer, I'm gonna finish with a little butter. I think butter adds a nice little roundness to it, nice undertone. And when you have enough oil in your pan, the butter won't burn. It's something that you have to kind of play with. You know, the smoking points of different oils and fats and varies. At the highest end is grapeseed oil. I mean, it's neutral flavored, very high smoking point, ideal for fish, okay? It's also the most expensive. And then coming down from there, you know, you get a whole family like vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, right? Salad oil, all these like little blends, and they work quite nicely too. You know, beneath that, you've got olive oil, and extra virgin olive oil, and then butter. And that's kind of like highest smoking point or lowest smoking point. But if you blend some of that higher smoking point oil with something, say like a butter, what you're going to find is you still have the ability to cook at a lower temperature, but higher than what butter would burn at, and really enrich your dish. These are little points in the French cuisine that don't always get told across the Atlantic. And consequently, everyone that goes to France, oh, the food was so much better. I didn't say what they're saying. They're probably in love and had some wine and, you know, in a beautiful setting. Partially true, but there are little points in the meal when you're cooking that can make a difference. So right here is a good point where I'm going to take and add some butter. It doesn't take much, but if you were over here right now, the smell is just tremendous. I can smell my onion. I get a little bit of celery. The carrot is coming out. It's all undertones in my nose, and I can smell that garlic. But now it's that sweet, rich cream I smell. Lightly browny, right? Like a nice Bourgeois set almost. And we want to take this rich, thick, sticky mixture, right? We want to take this and let this saute a little more, and then we're going to add tomato paste to it to really richen it up and give it some backbone. But look in this pan right here. You can see it is a little oil heavy, right? Our butter's still melting there. It's a little oil heavy, but it's so rich. And when you braise in that liquid, it's all going to get inside that meat over time, right? And look at that. Put all that tomato paste in there. And what I want to have happen is I want this to kind of become one big sticky mess that's going to be the base of my flavor. The next thing I can do to influence this dish is aromatics like the bay leaf and orange zest, of course, and a great stock. Okay, it's really important to put a great stock in here because this is your dish. This is your dish.
We have someone wondering if they could prepare this in a Dutch oven.
You can. You absolutely can. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that in a Dutch oven, no problem. Just again, making sure you're doing this. You're getting that color on the meat. I don't want to see a sweated meat. I want to see a nicely caramelized and flavorful meat because that really is the other layer of flavoring that's going to make this dish just right. Look at this here. You see how it's all coming together, and that butter is kind of melding with that tomato paste, the garlic, and it's nice and sticky. This is exactly what I'm hoping for. And I'm gonna let that tomato paste cook a little bit so that bitterness kind of releases and it concentrates to where we want it. Okay, so temperature and time is really what we're focused on here, because if we just do it at the right time and the right temperature, our flavors are maximized. Okay, so right now we're really taking our time, but enjoying this process. I've got you over here on the other side, and many people watching, and then Chef John's over here. He's talking with me, and we're enjoying ourselves.
They're wondering if the boneless short ribs could be purchased at the Edwin's Butcher Shop.
Absolutely. We sell them by the ton. Okay, no less. You can't get 4 short ribs, you buy a ton of them. Yes, we sell, this is one of our mainstays, the short rib. We sell a lot of short rib. We sell a lot of these peculiar cuts of meat like lamb shoulder. We sell a lot of things like these flank steaks, flat irons, skirts, hangers. I mean, we are really specialized in those cuts of meat you don't necessarily find at your local grocery store. So we've got a beautiful mess here. I can't tell you how exciting it is. This brings me back to Tours, a small town there in central France where I used to cook. And the chef just took his time. He also smoked a cigar. I have no idea how he could taste anything. But he would smoke a cigar, walk around the kitchen with his dog Duke, and he'd put his hand in something. He'd utter something in French, and he was exactly right. But it was all about just low and slow and appreciating the product we have. At this point, here's what I'm going to do. I've got all my onions, carrots, and celery sweated out to the right temperature, and the tomato paste is kind of making a sticky mess with that butter that's coming out in the nose. I cook with my nose here. I don't even have to look. I can know what's going on. Now I'm going to add the red wine here. And what I want to do is I want to add enough red wine, maybe to halfway fill this pan, about a half bottle of red wine for these 4 short ribs. The other half bottle, you know what we're going to do with later. And something to mention to you, I hope you heard that. There wasn't a big, right? There wasn't a big noise or a big splash when I was cooking. It just went in and it sizzled a little bit. You know why? Because I showed restraint. This whole time I'm showing restraint in the cooking and letting this product develop. And that's what I want. I don't want big flames and big, steam bombs. I just want to be able to cook here with my passion and these beautiful vegetables I've been given. And now I want to let it reduce, but not too hard, okay? I don't want it to be bubbling and boiling. That's only going to create a bitterness to what I'm doing here. That's very boozy. Hot wine, it's like mulled wine, okay?
What type of red wine do you recommend?
Well, it's funny you ask. We recommend an Edwards Bordeaux, right?
And where can they purchase this?
And Edwards, of course, right? So it doesn't have to be an Edwards Bordeaux, but I would decide upon a Bordeaux wine. You could use something from the Rhone Valley. You could use, a richer wine like Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, Grenache, from the old world. Sangiovese works nice from Italy, like a Chianti, right? Tuscan wine works pretty good too. Virtually the same grapes. Sometimes you'll throw some Cabernet Merlot in there. But what I really don't want to use is oftentimes some of these big, jammy, juicy California wines with high alcohol and an engineered fruit. Because again, I want balance in my dish. I want to show some restraint so that I can taste a little sardine or a spritz of an orange. This is what I want to be able to taste. So any wine that's going to have some sort of balance to it is what I recommend. But don't spend over the moon on this, okay? Don't go buy a Barolo for $60 a bottle and say, oh, it's the best sauce. I mean, you're not gonna get all those nuances in the end. So, any wine you'll find a decent quality wine between, $9 retail to, $18 retail. Just stick in that price range. If you go lower than that, you're not gonna taste this. You'll taste the difference. If you go higher than that, you won't taste the difference.
Is this a dish that you can order at your restaurant?
Well, you know what? If they mention your name, we will make it for them. Okay? And they say, hey, listen, we're the the cooking crew from the Hudson Library. We'll roll out the red carpet. Just give us a few days notice because you'll see this dish. It's really a 2 or 3 day work of art. We typically don't have it on the menu. We run it as a special, but it's something we're really passionate about making. So when this sauce is about, I'd say, a quarter of the way reduced, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this orange juice and, squeeze the best I can. Just going to add a little undertone there. But again, I don't want to waste anything today, nothing at all. And I'll put some orange in there. I'm going to let that continue to reduce, okay? And again, this is the backbone of your flavoring here. I'm tasting it. I don't want to have too much salt in here because it's going to braise and reduce, and the sauce will come out after the braise and it's going to reduce again. So you really have to forecast the amount of salt you're putting inside your base here. I'm going to now add anchovies. I think we have 6 anchovies here. I'm only going to put 3 in. Okay. I'm going to put orange zest in here. I'll put 2 nice orange zest in there. I've got a nice sprig of thyme of 2. I've got 1 bay leaf, maybe say 1.5 bay leaves we'll put in there. Okay. And then what we're going to do is just give it a good mix. And if we're going to bring a camera and zoom in on this because what you'll notice is this has just got a color like no other. There's no way to describe this color except lovely, right? It's not red, it's not burgundy, it's not, it's just lovely. It's a lovely color. And I'm going to take now and add my beef stock to it. It's reduced as much as I want. I've got some wonderful beef stock here. I'm going to add to this liquid, right? And the goal of this is to make sure we have enough to cover our short rib, okay?
Someone is wondering, how are the anchovies canned or how do you purchase them? And could you use anchovy paste?
Well, you use the canned anchovies, use like the whole anchovies, because what you're going to find is the paste is going to be just too aggressive. You just want a little bit of that flavor coming out. So I did for you today, usually I'd have a stove top here, right? And instead I had this nice induction burner. It only works with an induction pot. But when we're braising, what we're gonna want to braise it in is a higher, lipped pan. And since our liquid is hot, this is a key point to what I'm going to tell you here. You see, I put the stock in there. You have to bring the stock up to, like almost like a simmer. Don't put the stock in cold and then put it in the oven because you want these things to go in at the right temperature to penetrate the protein. So as soon as this comes to a boil, I know I'm ready to put my meat in, okay? So it's gonna take a second or two longer. And again, I would have done it from start to finish in this pan. I just have a nice induction burner here. And this doesn't conduct heat with the induction burner. So what I'm gonna do at this point, this has come to a simmer. I'm just gonna transfer this. Again, this is just the magic of TV here for you, okay? There's really nothing left in the pan. And I'm gonna put my, I'm gonna put my short ribs there, covered 3/4 of the way. You don't have to cover it all the way. Cover it 3/4 of the way there, okay? If it takes a little more stock, okay, so be it. If you had any of that juice, just put that right in there. Save it all, okay? And so what you're left with now is this. You can see a nice 3/4 of the way covered short rib. It's peeking out at me. I'm gonna always want to cover this, okay? But again, you have to bring it up to temperature, like a simmer, and then put your meat in so that when it goes in the oven, it's got the right way. So just put a lid on top, okay? Simple as that. And we're gonna take this and we're gonna put it in the oven, between 2.5 and 3.5 hours, okay? It's gonna take some time at 350 degrees. I'll tell you what, the thickness of them, I know we're about 3.5 hours for sure. And then you're gonna pull it out after those 3.5 hours. I'll talk about what's next, okay? So I'm gonna put this in the oven. Okay, so magic of TV, of course, we had a short rib already ready to go. So this is the part that's just gonna, you have to understand, takes a little time. So we just put our short rib in the oven, right? If you want to let this marinate for 3 days prior, you want to start your recipe, 4 or 5 days prior, because you marinate it for a couple days, you cook it like we're doing right now. When it's done cooking for that, 3.5 hours, what you're gonna do is you're gonna cool it in this pot, or transfer it to a different hotel pan, we call them, or like nice high lipped pan, and then you're gonna let this cool at room temperature, and then put it in the refrigerator overnight. All braises need to do 1 night in the refrigerator. Why? Because not a lot of intermuscular fat. And the goal of a braise is to really inject that moisture and that flavor into it. So why we do it is because that muscle, that protein, is contracting when it's cooking. And then what happens when it cools, it expands. When it does that expansion, all that beautiful liquid we just worked on making, with all that onion and carrot and anchovy and orange, sucks into that short rib while it's cooling. So for 1 day, 1 night, however you want to say, about at least 12 hours, overnight in a cooler area, it's got to sit and come together. And the next day after that, you can do what we're going to do now. Okay? So what will we be doing now? We fell asleep. It's now Friday at 5, 6 o'clock, and you're ready for dinner tomorrow night. You're going to take that cold pan or cold pot that you put in the refrigerator with the short rib and the liquid, and you're going to pull it out. On the stove top, you can heat it up, right, until it moves around and it's all loose. And you're going to take this nice mixture here. What you want to do is grab a plate for your short rib. And you're going to want to pull your short rib out of here, okay? And I'll just do that quite nicely here. And it's very simple. It's all right if it gets a little messy on the plate, but you're going to take your short rib and just pull it out like this. There you go. There you go. Pull that short rib out. And remember, this is Friday. This is 1 day later. It's nice and soft, okay, just where you want it. And you want to take all this beautiful liquid that you've worked so hard for, so patiently for, and you're going to want to take and strain out those vegetables. We're not going to be eating these vegetables. If you want to eat them, go ahead. I will not join you. But we want to get all out of there, all that flavors. It's done its job. And now we make our sauce.
Brandon, what temperature was the oven on?
350. If you have a convection oven, you might want to drop a little bit more, 325, but we're in a conventional oven right around 350 degrees.
And then someone wondered if they could do that on one of the Traeger pellet grills instead of an oven.
What is it called?
The Traegers, those pellet grills.
Like a green egg you're talking about? Or I'm not familiar with this one.
They make a few different kinds. The popular brand is called Traeger. It's like, I think it's like a smoker, but you can also grill on it.
I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. So what you were trying to do here is this. You're trying to develop the sear. So it's hard to do that in like crock pots, right? Sometimes you have to do it on the stove top and then transfer it. Then you're taking that liquid, or I'm sorry, you're taking your aromatics and sweating them out. If you can do this in the vessel that you're talking about, then you certainly can. And then once you sweat those ingredients out, you're obviously adding the liquid like we did, and then bring it to a simmer, and then cooking it in a controlled environment covered for a couple hours.
I think that's what they were, sorry to interrupt. I think that's what they were aiming at, was the part where you would normally put it in the oven. If they could have it in the Traeger grill, then
if it create a consistent temperature in a controlled environment at 350 degrees, you can do that. There's no reason why you can't.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just don't know the variables of it. Yep. We're very primitive here. If I could cook on a wood-fired oven from the 1800s, I'd find a better product, I think, to be honest with you. Maybe the control thing would get out of hand, but it's all about touch and some of this equipment that forces you to be in touch with it, using your upper lip for a thermometer, like when you're tempering chocolate, or just being close to it because you don't know what it's going to do. Imagine if we had a wood fire, we had to put a log on, we'd constantly be touching and checking, and we're closer to that product we're cooking. I'm one for being closer to my product, even if it gives me more gray hair. I think it's important to really be close to what you're cooking.
Awesome. And we had someone wondering, we marinated overnight. Is this something you can marinate for longer, like up to 4 days?
Yeah, I usually do our shorts 3 to 4 days. And how I would do it, it's like a two-part. You would, saute your Mirepoix like we did, and you'd add your red wine to it, and then you'd cook off the alcohol, and then you'd cool it. Then you would take that whole onion, carrot, celery, red wine cool mixture and pour it over the short ribs, covering it. And you would do that for 3 days at least, to 4. If you do it overnight, it's not going to hurt. But mind you, you're spending a lot of money on the wine and vegetables, because what's going to happen after that is you're going to pull it out. You're pretty much going to do the process again from the beginning. You can still use that red wine marinade to reduce, but you're going to have to get some fresher vegetables so you can really saute them. Yeah. Okay, so I've taken this after overnight sitting out in the refrigerator. I've taken it, warmed it up. I've strained the vegetables. I've pulled out the short ribs. So now all I'm left with really is this liquid that they've been cooking in that's been strained. I'm going to want to make sure I degrease, or découlage here, they call it, or déglace, where I'm getting all that fat off this short rib. Because remember, we use a lot of butter, we use some oil. I want to skim some of that fat off there. You can see it, that fat I want to skim off. And I want to get a pretty clean product here. And I don't want it to boil too hard. And there we are. So you can naturally reduce this to a point where you think it's flavorful enough, and then thicken it. As I'm going to show you here. Like right now, I find this sauce right now, this stock, I should say, to be rather thin and not full body. It's got a good undertone of orange, and the beef flavor is kind of just loose and light. So we're not going to have the time to reduce it, the time it would require. But I would probably take this mixture and reduce it down so it's flavorful, maybe about by another 25%. Making sure I've got a great stock that I'll make my sauce with, okay? So, again, I'm tasting it. Aha, it needs more body. I let it reduce. Maybe I season a little bit more. But the goal is to come up with a flavorful liquid here that you want to see as your sauce. And then we're going to thicken it. Now, we're using Roux. Roux is a mixture of butter and flour, okay? And, we take the butter and we melt it. It's, like 4 parts butter and 6 parts flour. Then we add the flour to that butter, melt it in a pan, and we cook it until it's got the desired color. You can make a blonde, you can make a white, blonde, or brown roux. Each one gets darker, it gets more flavor. But it also has less thickening power. But you can see here, this is thin as water here, right? That's really thin. So in a hot liquid, in a cold roux, we're going to thicken this up. So I'll just add a little bit at a time, making sure I break down all that flour. If you wanted to use a slurry, like cornstarch and water and thicken it up, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I like the richness of a roux, but it requires another step of getting butter and flour. And, by that time, you might just want to eat, right? So that's up to you how you want to thicken your sauce. But we're going to use a roux, and we're just going to add it, and we're going to make sure we whisk all that flour so it breaks down. And we're going to do something really important, and that's take our time, because sometimes it takes a minute for that flour to react and thicken the sauce. And the next thing you know, you're like, well, it's not thickening. And you add more, you add more, you add more. But guess what? Once you boil this out, it's like concrete. Okay? So when you add the roux, you're going to want to cook it for another 5 to 10 minutes, cooking out all that flour flavor and maximizing the thickening power of it.
We have some people asking if the sauce had been refrigerated and the fat came to the top, could they just remove it before heating it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can just give it right off and then plop it in the pan, or keep it in the pan that's in and heat it up to loosen the short rib and strain out the vegetables. You can absolutely do that. You might not catch it all. You're still going to want to have a step in there to think about. All right, I'm going to use a little bit more of my roux. You can see it's getting thicker already. I'm not nervous. I know I can make this work. So I put my roux in there. And oftentimes, you're probably going to want to strain it one more time, just to make sure there's no flour chunks in there, right? And we'll be looking pretty good. Now, a good dish to serve this with. Obviously, a green vegetable. Wonderful. You can find a seasonal green vegetable that's good. Asparagus, if it's out of season, it's always asparagus in season in California, a couple states away. But I like to serve a nice green vegetable. I can serve some roasted root vegetables or roasted potatoes, or like everyone's favorite, mashed potatoes, right? A nice pumpkin puree. That's like the ultimate, because this wonderfully seasoned aromatic sauce really is good with anything. Anything. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our dish here, and you can see, look inside here. Look at that nice thick sauce. Look at this. It's really thickened up nicely to the consistency that I want. Again, if you're at home, tasting, you're trying, you want to let that flour cook out for at least 10 minutes, okay? Of course, we don't have that time today, but that's what you want to do at home. All right. So what we're going to do next, we've got our dish here. We've got our short rib. I'm going to take off some of that remaining onion, whatnot. I like to just, for me, I like to just put this inside here, really coat it all the way around. But what I do here now, voila, I got a nice piece of short rib here. I got a wonderful piece of braised short rib there. You know, of course, I've got my green vegetable I will serve with this and some potatoes. But this kind of gives you a great idea of, look at this nice sauce here. Yeah, right. I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, I think things could be worse here. Allison, you're not a vegan, are you?
I am not.
Well, good. I'm glad. So, I mean, this is really just showing you and highlighting what a great braised short rib can look like. And you know, you're not here, but if you were to taste this, you know that it's tender, it's flavorful. If I'm serving this as a dish to my company, I'm putting some potato or some roasted root vegetable here and some nice bright green vegetable here, maybe even some spinach. And I'm serving with a nice glass of red wine. But this is the quintessential dish of a braised beef short rib. But really, any braise that you saw that you want to do, today is how you do it. I could have done the very same thing and braised a leg of lamb, or I could have took that leg of venison that you talked about. How about some sirloin? You can do braised. It's always the same way, but you can manipulate the flavors by the spices you add and the stocks that you use.
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much. We've gotten so many positive comments in the chat here and in the Q&A that they're loving this and learned so many new things, even if they're experienced cooks. So just to end out here, why don't you tell our audience how they can connect with you and support Edwin's?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, connecting with us is easy. I mean, edwinsrestaurant.org. Check out the website. That's going to give you more than enough information. I've spoken out at the Hudson Library before, and I know a lot of people out there are diners of ours here. So check us out in the square, Shake the Square. Not only do we have Edwin's Restaurant, we have the butcher shop, which is where we're at right now. We have the bakery right next door. And we even opened up Edwin's 2, which is the restaurant next to where Fire was. We took out a lease over there. It's starting in November. It's going quite well. So plenty of options for you to check out. But we're here, and we hope to see you soon for some short rib or other things.
Awesome, Brandon. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Again, thank you, Brandon. Edwin stands for a great mission. So if you don't know about it, check out their website and read about them. And hopefully we'll see you all in the future at other cooking demonstrations. Bye-bye.